The bluish glow of her phone lit up Jessica Parker's weary face as she sat behind the wheel, parked in a half-empty street shimmering with rain. Her fingers trembled as she typed the message that would change everything. I can't do this anymore. The baby's coming and I'm all alone. Before doubt could make her delete it, she hit send. The message flew off into the void, her last act of desperation. The phone clattered onto the passenger seat, and Jessica exhaled shakily. Outside, Boston's late October rain pounded against the windshield, the rhythmic drumming matching the tightening contractions in her abdomen. At 28, Jessica had imagined motherhood differently, maybe with laughter, love, and a partner by her side. But Michael Donovan, the man who had promised forever, had disappeared months ago, leaving behind nothing but excuses and a phone number she barely used anymore. She gritted her teeth through another wave of pain, pulling into the hospital lot as thunder rolled overhead. Unbeknownst to her, the message she sent had gone not to the man who broke her heart, but to another Michael entirely. Miles away, Michael Blackwood, the 40-year-old CEO of Blackwood Press, sat in his sleek penthouse, surrounded by spreadsheets and half-empty coffee cups. Numbers calmed him, people didn't. He'd built an empire on precision, not emotion. But when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, something about the message froze him mid-sip. I can't do this anymore. The baby's coming and I'm all alone. He stared at the screen, confused, reading it twice. Then the name beneath it caught his attention, Jessica Parker. He knew her. She was a junior editor who had joined the company less than a year ago. Quiet, talented, the kind of employee who stayed late polishing manuscripts no one else had patience for. He'd seen her name in reports, exchanged a few professional words during meetings. He had no idea she was pregnant, let alone giving birth alone tonight. For several long seconds, he debated whether to respond. This wasn't his business, but something about the raw fear in her words refused to leave him. Finally, against every rule of detachment he lived by, he typed, Jessica, is everything all right? Do you need help? Back at the hospital, Jessica barely noticed her phone buzzing as she stumbled through the sliding doors, clutching her belly. The nurses rushed to meet her, guiding her to a wheelchair. Emergency contact? One asked briskly. Jessica hesitated. Her parents were in Arizona. They wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. Her best friend was overseas. She shook her head weakly. There's no one. Minutes blurred into hours as contractions came faster. Pain, fear, exhaustion, all fused into a fog of survival. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Michael Blackwood still hadn't received a reply. Unease tugged at him. He called his assistant, Vanessa, who was finishing up late work. Vanessa, what do you know about Jessica Parker in editorial? There was a pause. Smart, diligent, keeps to herself. Why? Is she pregnant? Another pause. Yes, actually. She's due soon, I think. People were putting together a baby gift. That settled it. Michael grabbed his coat. Send me a list of hospitals within 20 miles of headquarters. Sir? Vanessa asked, startled. She sent me a message. It sounded like she was in trouble. I just need to make sure she's okay. Rain slicked across the city streets as Michael drove, his car cutting through puddles like glass. The rational part of him whispered that he was overstepping, that CEOs didn't show up at hospitals for near strangers. But he couldn't shake the image of that text, the silent cry for help. At Boston Memorial, Jessica's scream echoed through the delivery ward. After hours of labor, a thin, fierce wail filled the room, the cry of a newborn. The doctor smiled. She's perfect. Jessica, drenched in sweat and tears, looked down at the tiny bundle placed on her chest. Lily, she whispered. Hi, Lily. 30 minutes later, Michael walked into the same hospital, dripping rain onto polished floors. I'm looking for Jessica Parker, he told the receptionist. She's an employee of mine. I got a message that she might be in distress. The receptionist checked her screen. Yes, she gave birth not long ago. Healthy baby girl, room 304. Visiting hours are over unless you're immediate family, she added. Michael's lips pressed into a firm line. I'm her emergency contact, he lied smoothly. A few minutes later, he stood outside room 304, his hand hovering near the door. What was he doing? This wasn't his place. But then he heard a muffled sob, soft, raw, utterly human. Without another thought, he knocked gently. A tired voice called out, Come in. Jessica looked up, expecting a nurse, and froze. Her exhausted eyes widened in disbelief as Michael Blackwood, her stoic, unreachable boss, stepped into her hospital room. Her world tilted as their eyes met. A drenched CEO standing in her doorway, and a woman who had just given birth alone. Neither knew it yet, but one mistaken text had just rewritten both of their lives. Jessica blinked in disbelief, unsure if the exhaustion was making her hallucinate. Mr. Blackwood? She croaked, her voice hoarse from hours of labor. What are you doing here? Michael hesitated by the door, drenched from the storm, his usual sharp composure softened by something almost human concern. You sent me a message, he said quietly. I think it was meant for someone else, but when you didn't respond, I wanted to make sure you were all right. Jessica's cheeks burned with embarrassment. Oh my God, the message. The wrong Michael. I meant to text someone else, she stammered. This is mortifying. I'm so sorry. No need to apologize, he said gently, taking a cautious step closer. His tone held none of the clipped professionalism she was used to hearing in staff meetings. I just wanted to know you were safe. For a long, awkward moment, neither spoke. The steady hum of hospital machines filled the silence until a soft whimper rose from the bassinet beside Jessica's bed. She turned, instantly forgetting her embarrassment as she reached for the tiny baby bundled in pink. Michael watched quietly, his expression unreadable. He had faced corporate crises, multi-million-dollar deals, and boardroom wars without blinking, but this scene, this fragile woman cradling her newborn, left him completely disarmed. She's beautiful, he murmured. Jessica nodded, her eyes softening. Her name's Lily. Michael stepped closer to the bassinet, keeping a respectful distance. Lily Parker, he repeated, as though committing it to memory. That's lovely. Jessica's exhaustion finally caught up with her. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she whispered. You shouldn't have come all the way here. I disagree, he replied. Sometimes people need help, even if they're too proud to ask for it. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. It was strange, seeing her powerful, distant boss standing awkwardly beside a hospital bed, his tie loosened, his coat soaked through. He looked real. Before she could reply, a nurse entered with a clipboard and a bright smile. Mr. Blackwood, I presume? Jessica's head snapped up. Wait, no, he's not. The nurse chuckled. The proud father, I mean. Congratulations, sir. You have a healthy baby girl. Jessica froze. He's not, she began again, but the nurse was already jotting down notes, oblivious to her protest. Michael's eyes met hers over the clipboard. There was no smirk, no joke, only calm understanding. He gave a small nod, silently telling her, it's fine. And somehow it was. When the nurse left, Jessica covered her face with one hand. They think you're Lily's father, she groaned. I noticed, Michael said mildly. Don't worry, I've survived worse misunderstandings. Despite herself, a small laugh escaped her. The first genuine laugh since she'd gone into labor. It felt strange and wonderful all at once. I'm sorry you got dragged into this, she murmured after a moment. Don't be, Michael said, his gaze softened. No one should have to go through this alone. The words hit deeper than she expected. Jessica looked down at Lily, who had drifted back to sleep against her chest. Her father, the other Michael, he left months ago. Michael's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Then he's a fool. She didn't know how to respond to that. Instead, she focused on the rhythmic rise and fall of her baby's tiny chest. For a while, neither spoke. The world outside was nothing but rain and muted thunder. When Michael finally spoke again, his voice was quieter. You have family coming? My parents are flying in tomorrow. I'll be fine, she said, though the truth was she didn't feel fine at all. Michael nodded slowly, as though weighing something. I'll leave you to rest. But if you need anything at all, I'm only a call away. He took a card from his wallet and set it gently on her bedside table. Jessica picked it up after he left, tracing the embossed name, Michael Blackwood, CEO, Blackwood Press. Beneath it, handwritten in ink, call anytime, M. Bayajast. For a long while, she stared at the card. Part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity of all the people texting during labor. She'd chosen her boss. Yet another part of her, quieter and more vulnerable, couldn't shake the strange warmth that had filled the room when he was there. That night, as she drifted to sleep, Jessica thought of the two Michaels in her life. One who had vanished when she needed him most, and another who had appeared when she least expected it. Outside, the rain began to ease, leaving behind a silver sheen on the city streets. Jessica thought the chaos was over, that her wrong text had been a fleeting embarrassment. But the next morning, when she woke to a gift on her windowsill and a note signed MB, she realized her story with Michael Blackwood was only beginning. When sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds, Jessica Parker stirred for the first time in hours. For a moment, she lay still, unsure where she was. The rhythmic beeping, the sterile scent of antiseptic, and the faint whimper of her newborn reminded her she was in the maternity ward and she was now someone's mother. Her body ached, but her heart was full. The night before played through her mind like a dray. The rain, the panic, and then him standing there in her hospital room, his eyes full of concern. She wasn't sure if it had really happened or if exhaustion had spun it from her imagination. Then she saw it, a large bouquet of pink and white lilies perched on the windowsill, glistening with dew. Nestled beside it was a small teddy bear wearing a shirt that read, "Welcome to the world, Lily." Attached to the flowers was a card in simple, clean handwriting. "Call if you need anything, MB." Jessica sank back against her pillows, her cheeks warming. It had happened. Michael Blackwood, her CEO, the most intimidating man in the company, had shown up at a hospital in the middle of the night because of a message she sent by mistake. "Oh, Lily," she whispered to her sleeping daughter. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" The door creaked open, and a nurse stepped in, followed by Dr. Warner, the woman who had delivered Lily. "Good morning, new mama," Dr. Warner said cheerfully. "How are we feeling today?" "Sore," Jessica admitted, "and very tired. But good, really good." Dr. Warner smiled as she checked Jessica's vitals and glanced over the chart. "You did wonderfully last night. I'm just going to keep an eye on your blood pressure for another day, all right? No rush to leave." Jessica nodded, biting her lip. Another night meant more hospital costs, but safety came first. The doctor paused, glancing at her notes. "Your husband was very attentive last night, asking about postpartum care and what to expect. It's nice to see such involvement." Jessica blinked. "My husband?" she repeated. Then realization dawned. "Oh no, that wasn't my..." But the doctor had already moved on, offering a congratulatory pat before heading out. Jessica sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Wonderful. Now the entire maternity ward thinks Michael Blackwood is my husband." Before she could even process the absurdity, her phone buzzed with a text from her parents. Landed safely. "Be there soon." Relief flooded her. She needed family, warmth, something familiar to ground her spinning world. A few hours later, another knock sounded on the door. Expecting her parents, Jessica called, "Come in." But it wasn't them. Michael Blackwood stepped into the room, this time dressed casually in a gray sweater and dark jeans, looking surprisingly unpolished but disarmingly human. In his hands, he carried a takeout bag and a coffee cup. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, his tone softer than she'd ever heard at work. "Hospital food is an act of cruelty. I brought you something edible." Jessica blinked, taken off guard. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said simply, setting the food down, "but I wanted to." As he pulled the rolling tray closer, the smell of warm soup and fresh bread filled the room. It was such a small thing, yet it made Jessica's eyes sting with unexpected emotion. "I don't even know what to say," she murmured. "Thank you, Works," he said with a faint smile. Lily stirred then, fussing in her bassinet. Jessica tried to nurse her, but struggled with the latch. Tears of frustration gathered in her eyes. Michael, instead of looking uncomfortable, pulled up a chair. "My sister had trouble with her firstborn," he said. "She used a different position, which helped a lot." Jessica blinked in surprise. "You know about this?" "I learned quickly," he said lightly, taking out his phone. "May I call her? She'd know exactly what to suggest." Before Jessica could protest, he was already speaking softly to his sister, explaining the issue with clinical ease. When he hung up, he smiled reassuringly. "Try the football hold. It helps with latch and comfort." Awkwardly but carefully, Jessica adjusted her position as he suggested. To her amazement, Lily latched immediately. "It worked," she whispered, a tear escaping down her cheek. "Oh my God, it actually worked!" Michael's eyes softened. "Told you, my sister's advice rarely fails." For a few quiet minutes, the room was filled only with the tiny sounds of a baby nursing. Jessica exhaled slowly, the panic melting away. Mr. Blackwood, she began hesitantly. Michael, he corrected gently. We've shared too much life already for formality. Michael, she repeated, tasting the name like something unfamiliar yet comforting. Thank you. For last night. For this. You didn't have to. He shook his head. No one should face something like this alone. Not if I can help it. Before she could reply, the door burst open. Jess! Cried her mother, Barbara Parker, hurrying into the room with her husband right behind her. Both froze at the sight of Michael. Barbara's eyes widened. Oh, we didn't realize you had the company. Michael stood, extending his hand. Michael Blackwood. I work with Jessica. Her father blinked. Her boss? Michael nodded politely. Just making sure she and the baby are comfortable. Barbara's gaze darted between them, confusion plain on her face. That's very kind of you. Jessica wanted to melt into the floor. He just brought me lunch, she said quickly, cheeks pink, and helped with a feeding issue. Michael slipped into professional calm once again. Jessica's a valued team member. We take care of our own. He grabbed his coat. I'll let you have time with family. Take as much maternity leave as you need. Your position is secure. Jessica blinked in surprise. That's very generous. Thank you. He gave a small nod, his eyes lingering just a little longer than necessary. You're welcome. Then he turned and quietly left. As the door closed behind him, Barbara turned to her daughter with narrowed eyes. Jessica Claire Parker, she said slowly, why does your boss look like a man who just spent the night worrying about his family? Jessica's heart skipped a beat. Because maybe, just maybe, he had. The moment the door closed behind Michael Blackwood, the hospital room felt strangely quieter, as if he'd taken the hum of energy with him. Jessica barely had time to exhale before her mother, Barbara, turned on her with raised eyebrows. Jessica Claire Parker, she began, folding her arms. What exactly is going on here? The nurse said your husband had been with you all night. Now your boss shows up with lunch and advice about breastfeeding? Explain yourself. Jessica pressed a hand to her forehead. Mom, it's not what it looks like. Her father, Alan, frowned. Then what is it? Over the next hour, she told them everything, from the wrong text sent during labor, to Michael showing up at the hospital, to the mistaken identity that had snowballed into a misunderstanding she hadn't had the energy to fix. When she finished, silence settled over the room. Barbara's expression had softened, but Alan's jaw was tight. So, this Michael Donovan, he said slowly, he just disappeared when he found out? Jessica nodded. He said he wasn't ready to be a father, and that was that. Alan's eyes darkened. Coward! Barbara reached for Jessica's hand. Oh, sweetheart, you've been so strong through all this. I just wish we'd been here sooner. I didn't want to worry you, Jessica whispered. Besides, I wasn't alone. Not really. Her mother tilted her head. Because of him? Jessica hesitated. Michael Blackwood didn't have to come, but he did, and he was kind, really kind. Barbara exchanged a knowing look with her husband, but said nothing more. That evening, after her parents left for their hotel, Jessica sat in the dim room, rocking Lily gently in her arms. The flowers on the windowsill still filled the air with their faint perfume. Her phone buzzed a new message. MB, is there anything you need that I can bring tomorrow? My sister suggested nursing tops might help. Jessica smiled despite herself. Jessica, that's very thoughtful, but my parents are here now. We're fine. Thank you again for everything. MB, good to hear. Still, the offer stands. Parents or not, you don't have to handle everything alone. She stared at those words longer than she meant to. You don't have to handle everything alone. 6 weeks later, those words echoed in her mind as she stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse. It was her first day back at Blackwood Press, and her stomach twisted with a mixture of dread and determination. Okay, she whispered to her reflection, you've survived worse. Her parents had flown back to Arizona 2 weeks ago, and though they had offered to stay longer, Jessica had insisted she'd manage. Boston was home now, hers and Lily's. She had found a babysitter, Nancy, a retired nurse with the patience of a saint. Still, handing her daughter over that morning had felt like tearing off a piece of herself. By the time she stepped off the elevator onto the editorial floor, the familiar hum of keyboards and muted chatter surrounded her like a blanket of normalcy. Balloons and a small welcome back banner decorated her desk. courtesy of her coworkers. Jessica! Her friend Tara rushed over and enveloped her in a hug. You look amazing. How's the baby? She's perfect, Jessica said, pulling out her phone to show a photo of Lily in a pink onesie. Tara melted. Oh my God, those cheeks. She's adorable. Jessica smiled, though her heart ached a little. Thanks. It's been an adjustment. Tara lowered her voice. Any word from, the father? Jessica stiffened slightly. No, and I don't expect any. Tara squeezed her arm. His loss. You've got this. By mid-morning, Jessica had almost convinced herself that life could go back to normal. But when a familiar, deep voice spoke behind her, every thought fled her mind. Welcome back, Miss Parker. She turned, pulse quickening. Michael Blackwood stood there, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, calm as ever, though something unreadable flickered in his eyes. It's good to have you back, he said, offering a small nod. I've adjusted your workload for now. Focus on the Thompson manuscript until you're fully settled. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, she managed, falling back into professional tone. He nodded. My office. 2:00. We'll review your notes together. Before she could reply, he was gone, leaving the faint trace of his cologne and an ache in her chest she hadn't anticipated. Hours later, her phone buzzed. A message from Nancy. Lily's been crying for half an hour. She won't take the bottle. Any advice? Jessica's heart dropped. She excused herself and ducked into the mother's room, texting frantically. Try warming it more. She likes it close to body temperature. Minutes later. Got it. She's finally calm, sleeping now. Jessica exhaled shakily, tears stinging her eyes. How was she supposed to edit novels when half her heart lived at home? At exactly 2:00, she knocked on Michael's office door, notebook in hand. Come in, his voice called. The view from his floor-to-ceiling window framed the Boston skyline in winter light. He turned when she entered, his expression softening just slightly. Jessica, he said, not Miss Parker this time. Please, sit. She sank into the chair, praying he wouldn't notice her puffy eyes, but of course he did. You've been crying, he said quietly. I'm fine, she lied. He leaned forward. You're not. Her composure cracked. Lily wouldn't take the bottle this morning. She cried for hours. I almost called you. She caught herself. I didn't know who else to call. Michael studied her for a long moment, his gaze steady but warm. The next time, he said softly, you should. Jessica blinked, caught between shock and something dangerously close to hope. Because in his tone, she heard a promise, one that felt less like a boss's reassurance and more like the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. Jessica stared across Michael's polished desk, her pulse uneven. His words hung in the air like something fragile and dangerous. The next time, he'd said, you should. He wasn't looking at her like a boss speaking to an employee, but like someone who understood, someone who had seen the loneliness in her eyes and recognized it. Jessica swallowed, trying to steer the conversation back to work. I reviewed the Thompson manuscript. The pacing dips midway, but the premise is strong. Michael didn't interrupt, but he didn't take his eyes off her either. When she finished, he leaned back slightly, fingers steepled. You're good at pretending, he said softly. Her brow furrowed. Pretending? That everything's fine. The quiet in the room felt heavier than silence. She opened her mouth to protest, but he continued, voice gentler now. When my sister went back to work after her first child, she tried to do it all, be perfect, be strong. She nearly broke herself trying to keep up. Jessica's throat tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we can do this differently, he replied. What if you worked from home 3 days a week? Handle manuscripts remotely, attend meetings as needed? We'll make it work. Her eyes widened. That's never been done before here. He shrugged lightly. Then you'll be the first. Jessica blinked, overwhelmed. Why would you do that for me? For a moment, he didn't answer. He turned his chair toward the window, the late afternoon light catching the sharp line of his jaw. Finally, he said quietly, because 6 years ago, I learned what it's like to lose everything. Jessica froze. He wasn't looking at HR. His gaze had gone somewhere far away. My wife, he said. She died giving birth to our son. He lived for 3 hours. The words fell like a whisper, yet the pain behind them filled the room. I'm so sorry, Jessica said softly, her voice trembling. He gave a small nod, still staring out at the skyline. Most people don't know. I buried myself in work after that. It was easier than facing the silence. He turned back to her then, eyes steady. So when I got that message from you that night, when I realized you were alone, I couldn't ignore it. I wouldn't. Jessica's heart ached. The compassion behind his controlled demeanor suddenly made sense. Every measured word, every act of quiet kindness. You didn't have to explain, she whispered. But I'm glad you did. He smiled faintly. Good. Because the offer stands, not as your employer, but as someone who's been where you are. You don't have to prove anything, Jessica. For the first time in months, she felt seen, not pitied, not judged, but understood. Thank you, she said, voice thick. I'd like to try that arrangement. Then it's settled, he said. Start next week. Take the rest of this one to adjust. As she stood to leave, he hesitated. Jessica, he said, there's something else. Her pulse jumped at the tone of his voice. He opened a drawer and pulled out a plain white envelope. This came to the office yesterday. It was addressed to you, but sent to my attention. The handwriting on the front froze her in place. She'd know it anywhere. Michael Donovan, she breathed. Michael's expression hardened. He must have tracked you through the company records. He claims he's been trying to reach you. Her stomach twisted. Why? He says he wants to meet his daughter. For a moment, the words didn't register. Meet his daughter. After 6 months of silence. After abandoning her when she needed him most. Michael handed her the letter. I haven't responded. Thought you should see it first. Jessica sat slowly, her hands trembling as she unfolded the page. Donovan's words were short, written in the same careful script she'd once found charming. Jessica, I've had time to think. I made mistakes. I'd like to meet Lily and discuss how I can support her. I want to do right by both of you. She read it twice, jaw tightening. The words support and do right tasted hollow. He's not sorry, she said quietly. He's calculating. There's a difference. Michael's voice was calm but firm. You don't owe him anything. I know, she whispered, but I need to handle this carefully. If he pushes for rights, then you'll have help, Michael interrupted. You're not alone in this anymore. The certainty in his voice steadied her more than she wanted to admit. She folded the letter and slipped it into her bag. I'll think about how to respond. Take your time, he said, rising from his seat. Whatever you decide, I'll back you. Their eyes met, an unspoken trust passing between them. That evening, as Jessica sat rocking Lily to sleep, the letter burned in her mind. Across the room, the flowers Michael had sent weeks ago were just beginning to wilt, their petals curling but still beautiful in their decay. She picked up her phone and opened her messages, her fingers hovering over his name, Michael Blackwood. Thank you for today. I don't know what I'd do without your help. A moment later, his reply came. You'll never have to find out. Jessica exhaled slowly, her heart caught between fear and something softer, something she dared not name. But as she set her phone down, a quiet knock echoed from the door, and on the other side, her past was waiting. The knock came softly, but in the quiet of the evening, it sounded like a thunderclap. Jessica's chest tightened. She already knew who it was. She opened the door to find Michael Donovan standing in the hallway of her apartment building, his once confident grin replaced by a tentative smile. Hey, Jess, he said, voice uncertain. You look good. Upbeat, she crossed her arms. You shouldn't be here. He nodded, shifting awkwardly. I got your address from the letter I sent to your company. I didn't mean to invade your privacy. I just thought maybe you could show up 6 months late and fix everything, she cut in, voice sharp. You don't get to just walk back into my life like nothing happened. He flinched, then tried to recover with a sigh. I deserve that. But I've changed, Jess. I panicked before. I wasn't ready, but I am now. I just want to meet my daughter. Jessica studied him, the man she'd once thought she loved, the man who told her to take care of the problem as if their child had been an inconvenience. The memory still burned. She's asleep, Jessica said flatly. And you're not coming in. Just a few minutes, he pleaded. Please, I'm not here to fight. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. 5 minutes, she said quietly. Michael stepped inside, glancing around the apartment. His gaze fell on the baby swing near the window and the framed photo of Lily sleeping in Jessica's arms. His expression softened. She's beautiful, he murmured. Looks like you. She looks like herself, Jessica replied coldly. He winced. I get it. You're angry. I was a coward. I said things I can't take back, but I'm here now. I want to help. Jessica crossed her arms, unmoved. Help how? With money? With visits when it's convenient? I want to be part of her life, he said quickly. I know it'll take time, but maybe we can figure something out. For her sake. For her sake, Jessica echoed bitterly. You mean for your conscience? Donovan's voice hardened slightly. I'm still her father. I have rights. The word rights made Jessica's stomach twist. She'd known this might come, but hearing it aloud was like being stabbed with déjà vu. Rights come with responsibility, Michael. You gave those up when you walked away. Before the conversation could escalate, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen, Michael Blackwood. Without thinking, she answered. Hello? Jessica? Everything all right? His tone was calm, but she could hear the concern underneath. Her throat tightened. He's here, she whispered. There was a pause on the line. Then, in that steady, grounding voice of his, he said, Would you like me to come? Jessica looked up at Donovan, restless, impatient, a storm she'd already survived once. No, she said softly. I've got it handled. When she hung up, she squared her shoulders. You need to leave, she said firmly. We'll arrange visitation through lawyers. No more surprise visits. No more showing up unannounced. This isn't your redemption story. Donovan stared at her, something dark flickering in his eyes. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. Fine, he muttered, if that's how it has to be. When the door finally closed behind him, Jessica's knees went weak. She leaned against the wall, trembling, not from fear, but from relief. That night, as she rocked Lily to sleep, the baby's small fingers curled around her own. We're okay, Jessica whispered. We're really okay. The next morning, a knock came again, gentler this time. When she opened the door, Michael Blackwood stood there, holding 2 coffees and the faintest hint of a smile. I figured you could use this, he said. Jessica's heart lifted in spite of everything. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said simply, echoing his words from that night in the hospital. They sat together on the couch, watching Lily kick her feet on the blanket. The city buzzed quietly beyond the window. She's growing fast, Michael said softly. Looks stronger every day. She is, Jessica said, then glancing at him. Thank you for checking in, again. He shrugged lightly. I don't check in out of obligation, Jessica. I do it because I want to. For a long time, neither spoke. The air between them felt delicate, as if one wrong word might break it. Then Lily gurgled happily, and they both laughed, the sound easy, natural. Do you ever think, Jessica said after a moment, about how strange it all started? A wrong message? Michael smiled faintly. Sometimes the wrong messages lead to the right people. Her breath caught. He wasn't teasing. There was something real, steady, and entirely unexpected in his gaze. 6 months later, autumn swept through Boston again, painting the city in shades of gold. Jessica stood at the stove stirring pasta while Lily babbled in her high chair, throwing toy blocks with uncontainable joy. The sound of keys turning in the lock made them both look up. Da! Lily squealed, her favorite word. Michael stepped in, the serious CEO replaced by the man who belonged here with them. He scooped Lily up, kissing her chubby cheek. There's my girl. Jessica smiled, warmth flooding through her. A year ago, she'd been terrified and alone. Now she had peace and the quiet, certain love of a man who had chosen them, not out of duty, but devotion. Michael set Lily down and turned to Jessica, eyes gleaming with something more than gratitude. There's something I've been meaning to ask. He reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. Jessica froze, heart stuttering. Michael. He smiled, dropping to one knee beside Lily's high chair. Jessica Parker, will you and Lily make me the luckiest man alive? Her eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered, laughing through them. Yes, we will. As he slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her close, Jessica realized how life had twisted and turned to lead her here, to the family she hadn't planned but had somehow found. Times love doesn't arrive through grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it slips through the cracks of our mistakes, disguised as a wrong text that turns out to be the right beginning.